out there. As you can see below, there, as you can see below, creatives, community, and kind folks, yes, all you guys, welcome to RPG with DBJ. Wow, it says that below me. We are going back to our usual theme in which we take this probably the only channel on YouTube and Twitch and simulcasting over on Discord, Fantasy Grounds College Discord server to be specific, where we take one subject and we stretch it out all week. Monday through Thursday, we're going to take the subject and talk about it. Talk about how we can include it, what problems there are, the history of maybe even, and have some fun talking about a particular subject. This subject is flight. Now, we do this Monday through Thursday. Friday is Future Friday, and it is reserved for one of my favorite settings, themes in science fiction, and that will be eclipse phase and, of course, altered carbon. And this being kind of a second season for me, as well as there being a second edition of Eclipse Phase, as well as a second season of Altered Carbon coming out, I thought it would be a great way to get into that for science fiction. But today, Scott's so funny. Scott posts, I just flew to make the stream, and boy, are my arms tired. Ba-dum boom. Ba-dum boom, boom. So, we're going to talk about one of the problematic things that happens in a lot of role-playing games and is very contentious on a number of levels. And you guys, insta-healing is one of them, teleportation is another one, flight. We're going to talk about flight this week. So today is Monster Monday. Hey, Encountermancer, morning. So we're going to talk about flight. And today, it being Monster Monday, we talk about monsters, of course, creatures, NPCs, and the individuals and groups in our world that may have access to something. Today, of course, whether it's flight, sometimes we talk about creating some random ones, all that kind of stuff. So normally, flight is associated when we think of, because of the world's most popular role-playing game, Dungeons & Dragons and all of its iterations, there are lots of monsters that have flight. Harpies and manticores and pegasi come to mind, but there are many more. And oftentimes, we don't really think about the villains and the adversaries that we have in our world having access to flight, but we sure do worry about it when our PCs have access to it. Yes, normally because, well, flight allows you to circumvent so many things, and therefore, for a lot of us, it becomes a problem in and of itself. Foolish Kiwi, hey, what's going on? Says, as someone who is currently playing a diminutive-sized, 6-inch tall flying fake creature character, I'm super excited to see this subject come up. Your homebrew race called the Bar Dieter? Locust-esque Tinkerbell. Okay. So, of course, one of the things that deals with, yep, and Omen says, like the pixies from Shadowrun, yep, or like the pixie slammed with the broom that Will Smith did in the movie Bright that came on Netflix here in the States. Yeah, okay. So, of course, with flight, you have ourselves. I was thinking the same thing, Tesla. Like Bard Eater? Bard to Tear? Bard Diater? Yes. Bard Eaters. So, okay, first thing is, when it comes to flight, is how fast can something fly? Not too important unless you're talking well past the movement rates of the things in your world. But also, how efficient is the flight? Now, for those of you who have ever listened to Brandon Sanderson's lectures on writing. He is a writer. He does lectures at a college, and one of his things is especially listen to the lecture when it comes to magic and magic systems when it comes to writing. And magic is a catch-all for not necessarily spell casting, but magic meaning the extraordinary things your world has and your main antagonists and protagonists have access to. Hey, Infinite, yo, 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 what's up? So, one of his rules, he states that it's the limitations of your magic are more important than the magic itself. And so when flight is introduced into your world, how is that flight introduced? Is it majority of winged creatures? Does someone have levitation? Is there a weight limit? How maneuverable is a being over one over another? Are there hazards like wind or aerial obstacles like webs or tree branches or tapestries or banners or something, that kind of stuff. So, are there any limitations on how the flight is used, and can you incorporate them into the game? Now, for the most part, most games, including Dungeons and Dragons, really don't go into that kind of detail when it comes to the ability to fly. It'll just say, okay, you have a flight, you have a movement rate, let's deal with it. Now, and depending on how you relate this into your game narratively, I've known of many people that, especially player characters, that will say, well, if my character can fly and I know someone's got a spear or a bow and it's got like a 60-foot range, I'm just going to fly to 70 feet so they can't hit me or anything. Now, it is true that I'm sure if you had the ability to fly that you could kind of guesstimate how far something away is, but also when it comes to flight, gravity has a lot to do with things, and that might be getting a little bit too deep into the weeds when it comes to character capabilities. But when you have your adversaries, because since today is Monster Monday, sometimes we ignore the fact that they are. Thank you, Dead Man, for popping that into the into the chat. Thank you. A lot of times we forget that when a creature can fly, that they will use their environment to their greatest advantage. An example would be maybe a harpy flying over the player characters and grabbing up like an old tree branch and dropping it on their heads, on the PC's heads, or those same harpies flying around, the wooded trees and using the trees as cover as the PCs try to snipe at them with their arrows and spears and javelins or something. Or a a dragon or something not just being able to claw and strike and use their tail and breath weapon and such, but a dragon on top of a mountain ridge could very easily use their tail to swipe at loose rocks or something and dump it down on the PCs down in the valley. Or maybe the PCs are scaling up the mountainside and there are, I don't know, stone sling throwing goblins riding on the back of pterodactyls or something of that nature. And so having some fun with the flight, depending on the intelligence of the creature and their capabilities, I think would be very, very not just unique, but give the PC something dynamic to think about. Also, remember, let's think about our real world basic flying creatures, birds, right? Of course, there's insects as well. Insects count in this. But a lot of us think of birds, and we think of a bird and a big bird's nest, and it's up in a tree. And we stand on the ground, and we, block the sun, and we look up, and we go, wow, that bird's nest is really out there. But how often do we place our flying, especially naturalized creatures that live in nature, how often do we put them out somewhere where the PCs physically can't reach them? Right? True. True, true. Foolish Kiwi talk about his little 6-inch PC. Although there are, I don't know, there's some interesting things you could do. What is it? The spool of thread and the poison drip down the spool of thread into the mouth of the sleeping individual. Maybe putting an adversary to sleep, either for a very long time or permanently. Carlos Moran says, I played a game before where village people riding pterodactyls would pick people up and just drop them from a deadly height. Yeah, that would be a thing. The flyby snatch and just dropping people from heights, of course that would happen. As a matter of fact, like, take an eagle, right? Take a giant eagle or a hawk or a falcon or predatory bird or something. They swoop down from long heights, grab their prey, and go to fly off. If that prey is not a fish but a player character fighting back with sharp items, they would just drop them out of sheer desperation. Like, stop poking me! I'm just trying to eat you. What's so wrong with that? And drop those individuals from a long height. Or if there are height differences in the environment, they could just snatch them off the ground and dragging them 20, 30, 50 feet or something, a few hundred yards away to where a ledge is, where there's a huge drop off, would be pretty interesting as well. Or just dropping the a target into some other hazard or obstacle or condition or something, such as dropping them into a lake in full plate mail, dropping them into a web, dropping these individuals into lava or acid or quicksand or tar or something, knocking someone off of a rooftop into an alleyway, those kind of things. Yep, they're foolish. Yep, saying it's just hysterical. You say that my entire shtick in combat is poison and tripwires. Yep, absolutely for that. So the idea of like flying creatures having other tactics, and now mind you, do a lot of games have or incorporate these tactics? Maybe not, but you can pull from them, right? Like, for example, grappling rules. While many games they tend to overcomplicate them, grappling rules would make sense for something like a giant eagle or owl or harpy or manticore or any of the other mid-level creatures I love to play with. You could use those. As a matter of fact, you could even, because flying creatures have such a movement rate, they can use height differences to find, like, again, they can use it to find cover. Maybe if they're flying in a city, they can fly behind buildings or use barriers that are more height restricted than they are horizontally restricted, more vertical. For example, a flying creature can fly under a bridge and pause there if the PCs are on top of the bridge, or vice versa. PCs are going under a walkway or catwalk or a bridge, and the flying creature can fly over top of said cover, maybe reaching down or using a tail lash or a breath weapon or something like that. And of course, if a game has, like 5th edition Dungeons and Dragons has, like, half cover, 3/4 cover, you can use that. I'm going a little more mechanical things today, but yes, you can. That's usually reserved for Tuesdays. But you can use reflavor what's already in the game and use those. Another problem that seems to crop up a lot is that flight allows someone to avoid hazards. And my feeling on that is, initially up front, yes, the answer is yes. I created 16 problems for the PCs to go between A and B, and if they have access to flight, they're just going to fly over all of them. And what's the point, right? And my feeling to that is basically this, and it's a little bit harsh, but you're prepping the wrong material if your PCs have access to flight. Yep, and Omen says they can also make an incredibly long and dangerous journey ridiculously short. That is the running theme But let's take, for example, the things that already fly, right? There are things that already fly, predatory birds, insects, things of that nature. Now, unless the game or unless in your particular setting you have not set this out, flight is not perfect, and it doesn't last forever. Usually there is a duration, and that duration could be based on time periods. That duration could be based on a magic item. It absolutely needs to be based on the endurance of the flying creature, if it's winged or using some kind of mental lift. If it is an energy source, it needs to be prepped. And remember, the more interesting thing is not the ability, but the limitations of that ability. So, just like there are hazards on the ground, there are absolutely many hazards in the air. And some of those hazards can come from other things that can fly as well. I think oftentimes when we think of the minute a player character has the ability to fly, that all of a sudden our minds go to everything that can't fly and what that PC has an advantage over, as opposed to saying, well, if a PC has access to flight in a world, it doesn't mean it actually goes to prove it actually proves the exception that there are other things in the world that do fly. I remember quite a while ago when the Aarakocra, the Aarakocra, I guess if you want to pronounce both A's, in Dungeons and Dragons were introduced. Yeah, beware the final shadow. I forget what that was from. Dragon's Shadow. The When it was introduced, people balked at the idea and was like, "Oh, they'll never be in my game because they can fly over all the hazards, and at first level they'll dominate everything." And my contention is, if a player character picks a race that can fly, apparently there's races that can fly in this world. So why wouldn't there be other things? And if there's an entire race on its own that can fly, then why wouldn't there be people who are already not adapted? They already know what that tactic is, right? Um, yeah. And I presume you're referring to there. There are two references to Avatar in that one about flight. But there are many aerial problems when it comes to flight, whether it comes to winds and storms, both electrical, hail, snow, blizzards, fog, smoke, blinded by the sun, getting injured if you are flying under your own power, whether it is a winged animal or a player character that is damaged or injured or receives some kind of condition and they're flying, also creates a problem. There are lots of weapons and things that can be used against those that fly. Of course, you have yourself your bows, your arrows, bow and arrows, your bolts from crossbows, your spears and javelins, but you also have things like nets. And just as a flying creature can see what's going on the ground, land-based creatures can find lots of cover to force the flying creature to have to reduce its height in order to be effective in a fight, much like, say, human beings running away from criminals running away from helicopters in our favorite TV show Cops, and are running away from the spotlights and stuff. What do? Well, they run undercover. They run under an overpass or a bridge or hide under a car. And enemies and player characters can do the same thing. Oh, what is that? A bridge? I'm going to run under the bridge to force the harpies to fly under the bridge to even come after me, to then force them into a narrow position. That this literally happened to me. I don't know. I might have been 12 or 13 or something, and my players led harpies into the between two portcullises, and lo and behold, they used that tactic against me, and I was like, "That's kind of cool. I think that should happen." Yep. Yeah, Dead Man says it says that a supporting example is for Omen is I had a setting that was in a canyon and it had to make the crosswinds impassable to keep the players from just flying out of the canyon. Absolutely, hey, make a roll and I don't know, acrobatics or some dex or maneuverability or something, or it's going to get slammed against the wall. And now remember, if you're flying, you're kind of in a double whammy, right? So an example would be player characters walking along the ground, high winds, players might need to roll to stay on their feet or something, right? Okay, no big deal. Flying creature, okay, make a roll to see if you're not buffeted by the winds. Oops, okay, you lose your maneuverability, you slam against the wall in the canyon. Oh, and you're going to fall an additional 200 feet. How about that? So there is that limitation, as well as the fact that let's be honest, it makes a lot of sense that a flying creature tends to get the most attention. If I introduced, I don't know, a flying manticore, all the PCs will go like, "Hey, we need to take that down." A flying PC is a pretty big target, and I don't mean big in size. I'm saying like any adversaries that would worry about something flying would probably focus a lot of their attention on the one thing that's flying, if there's only one thing. Scott Post says a party with flight is bad, but one PC who can fly, I can work with. They can fly, but they are also alone, can be shot at or targeted by flying predators, etc., right? Yeah, it's all fun and games. So the guards are riding griffins. Hell yeah! And so, I think one of the mistakes that I think we make is the minute a single PC gets flight, we just forget that there's other flying things. Like, oh, they're playing an Aarakocra or they're playing a Dragonborn and sorcerer or something, and they've got wings. So now my game is gone and it's stupid. Yeah, I love griffins, but especially in your setting. Griffin riding guards are awesome. They're like fantasy police choppers. Hell yeah. So, unfortunately, we tend to forget about maybe some other minor things that flying creatures have. Like, for example, flying creatures, Game of Thrones. Let's get a raven to send a message, right? Flying creatures send messages. They are scouts. Many flying animals have and I could relate this to other flying creatures. They have a pretty good sense of seeing things from afar, let's say, and so they are very good at keeping track of the PCs. If your NPCs are using them as scouts or something, let's say you do a typical goblinoid army or something. Why wouldn't there be one or more? Maybe there's one of the goblinoids, orcs, hobgoblins, bugbears, whatever, doesn't matter, is utilizing some kind of trained flying pet or something, like, I don't know, a bat or pterodactyl or some other nasty that has wings and can be trained, bloodhawks or something, and they're using them to spot where the PCs are that are trying to sneak up on their raiding party or something, right? And it would only take a bird to circle over an area to point out where someone's hiding or where there is fresh water or prey or food or a danger or something where it's been trained. Yeah, Foolish Kiwi says in 3.5, flight is also divided into flight efficiency categories. So if you have bad flight, it's a lot harder to recover from faults and can't turn sharply. Yeah, if you remember, everyone's game and setting is their own. If you want to incorporate some kind of leveling system for your flight in your game, you can do that. And I mean that literally. Meaning, like, if you put more weight on one side, the other side goes up. So you want to equalize the level. So, and I say that you could establish high maneuverability with a low weight and strength scale on your flight. So you could say, well, I'll allow you to be very maneuverable, but you're unable to, carry or wear heavy items, and even minor winds will probably buffet you around, as opposed to low maneuverability but maybe a high strength weight ratio, and so that something can move slowly in straight lines without being able to maneuver and turn corners very quickly, but maybe it's, the PC or the creature or something can carry a heavy load. Now, of course, that heavy load could be based just on the creature, like an NPC's flight, NPC, creature, monster, what have you. So, off the top of my head, I couldn't tell you how strong a harpy is versus a manticore versus, I don't know, a sphinx or something like that. But those flying creatures, you could say, well, it's going to be foolish says that's exact my exact situation. I can carry 15 pounds, but only fly with 7. Exactly. So you could. It would make sense if you just said internally, like in your mind as a GM or something, go, okay, well, let's see. This creature has a strength of 22. Does it make sense they can carry a strength of 22? It's probably got an 11 strength for carrying weight, 22 if it's on the ground, right? And that's kind of what you're saying. And or you could just do a reduction, right? Like, okay, well, all right, lightweight gives it this, no penalties. Medium weight, okay, it's got a disadvantage on the roll. Heavyweight, whatever. And off to work. All right, Omen, we'll still be here, dude. You could always, me. You could always tune in anytime. Join all the rest of us, creatives, communities, and kind folk out there. So, anyway, have a great one at work. Have a good evening, as a matter of fact. Anyway, the other things that can happen with flight are you could add a limitation. Let's go with the high winds thing, right? High winds don't just buffet people around, but they could force someone or something, especially if they're also carrying weight, to be forced to have to land. So, for example, you could say, all right, well, you can't stay in the air indefinitely. You have to land at the end of your movement rate, because if you don't, the exhaustion is going to take you out. So maybe let's take an eagle in our own world. Eagle flies, grabs a fish out the water. The eagle doesn't fly for 8 hours later. The eagle goes and flies and is like, A, I got to kill the fish, and B, I'm flying awkwardly, so I need to land somewhere. Same thing with like an owl going after like a field mouse or something, right? They're going to grab this thing. They're a little bit awkward. They need to land somewhere and take care of their prey, if it isn't dead already, and usually isn't. So they do need to perform some kind of actions or something. Also, if you are flying and there are other predatory animals that also fly and are used to going after flying creatures, if you're the one flying, you're going to be a target for so many other things in the world. And listen, you can foreshadow this plenty of times. The griffin riding guards is one way of foreshadowing it. PCs don't even have to interact with them. You just describe, as you're coming towards town, you see the city-state walls, and flying in and around the city, the towers of the city, you see griffins, wearing barding, and guards flying upon them, their banners flowing behind them, attached to their armor or something like that. And off to the west, you see a group of them flying in the traditional arrowhead shape formation, as there are 8 or 9 griffin guards flying off to perform some kind of action. What do, right? They don't even have to encounter them. Foolish says house cats are the grim reapers of birds and bugs. That's another thing as well. There are land-based animals that go after flying creatures. Frogs are one. Cats are another one. How many birds have feral cats killed? Probably in the millions. How do they do it? Well, they lay in wait and they hide. And creatures that have camouflage may be used to going after flying creatures. Even let's take the Underdark, right? How many oozes and shape-changing creatures are able to blend in with the environment? How many plants are able to blend in with the environment, or a earth elemental or anything like that? Hell, even burrowing creatures can blend into the environment by staying underground. until the flying creature lands or flies through that canyon or gets a drink for water um, or anything. And that includes the fact that in your game you could even include exhaustion and just say, listen, for every if you're going to fly every 10 minutes or every hour, you're going to get a level of exhaustion. I'll give you your con bonus or modifier. So, you got a con bonus of +2. All right, you can fly for 3 hours, but after that, you're going to start accruing exhaustion. And the PC's like, man, I was hoping I could fly my druid could shape change into a flying creature and carry us the 3 weeks there. I can't just fly the whole way. You're like, nope, you're going to have to land. And, just as humanity we have always had a fascination with things that fly. Even till today, there are people who go out and bird watch. There may be tribalists that look up in the sky and go, that's a weird flying thing. Let's track it down. Let's communicate with smoke signals or sounds or something like that, and let somebody know that some kind of weird flying thing is going overhead. Scott Poe says griffins are trailing the first ad banners. Like going to a fair, you see the plane flying overhead, talking about, like, I don't know, buying aluminum siding or something. Yeah. Griffins flying through the air, like talking to each other, like, they used to fear us. They're like, yeah, well, it's a way to make a living. I don't mean the Griffin riders, I mean the Griffins themselves. Foolish Kiwi says falling damage is a fun risk as well. Hell's yes. And remember, there are things that you can fall into as well. Let's not forget that. Fall into a jungle and you'll fall into trees and get all flipped around and tangled before you hit the ground. And if you have a distinction for winged flight over, I don't know, hot air balloon flight or something like that, I think that would make a lot of sense as well. I know there are no specific rulings over winged flight, but a critical hit or if you incorporate a rule for targeting, like, hey, I want to use my arrow to shoot that person's cloak and get it stuck against the wall, you might say, well, you know what? If you're going to target someone's specific location, it's got to be at disadvantage automatically, right? But I'm going to target the wing with my javelin to see if I can knock it out the air. Why not? Why not allow that to happen? Or a critical hit, instead of give someone the option. All right, I'll let you do double damage, but you know what option would be? I know you were looking to cut off that creature's tail or hit its wing or poke out its eye. Yeah, oh, that's cool. Can I use my crossbow bolt and put a bolt through the manticore's wing? Sure. Like, yeah, the barbarian's like, sweet, I get to, open up a can of whoop ass on it when it hits the ground, right? As well as it taking falling damage, right? Carlos Moran says there's a prehistoric Australian cat that hid in trees to jump out and ambush large birds midair. I don't doubt that. And yeah, why not? How many? I got 3 cats, and they like to perch on top of things and swipe down on top of something. I brought up webs. Why wouldn't giant spiders or swarms or hives of animals be in the air, up in trees or crevice or up under the what would it be, the eaves of tall buildings or towers? Why wouldn't there be a beehive or giant beehive or sturges that live up there that never bother anybody, right? You get a beehive, and that beehive probably doesn't bother anybody, and you don't bother it until something flies by it, and then all of a sudden, the swarm comes out going after whatever it is. And there are many places in our own world. There's a place in Florida, more specifically because I happen to have seen it, but there was a bridge that people go there in Florida, and everyone stands over the bridge, and as the sun comes down, what flies out from underneath the bridge? The bats that are asleep underneath it, right? And so we aren't used to thinking of things in 3 dimensions, but if you have or you are including flight into your world, I think it behooves us to think in 3 dimensions. And remember, the the game is about adventure and exploration and conflict and overcoming obstacles. I understand flight is very efficient at overcoming, I don't know, a raging river or crossing a chasm, but if it means having to juggle the PCs, like I can only carry one of you, and there's six of you, including our NPCs and our gear, I'm gonna have to fly each of you one at a time, or I'll fly a rope across, and then you guys can slide the gear across while I do a thing. Let that happen. Let it be a thing. Foolish Kiwi says called shots are the spice of life. I don't know if they kept them past 3.5, but I love when players target specific body parts of enemies to get an effect. No, it isn't a thing, although it is implied in 5th edition that you can whenever you are applying modifiers in 5th edition, they want it simpler so you can apply advantage or disadvantage as opposed to applying like a numerical value and looking up a chart of various numerical values like +3 or -5. So I would just say it's automatically disadvantage no matter, well, no, some player characters who are like an arcane archer or ranger that's, a dex ranger, well, they still get a bonus. So yeah, I would say called shots are disadvantage and leave it at that. Now, what happens when you make the called shot? Like, could the manticore reach around and pull out the javelin to fly yet again? That's going to be up to maybe how much damage you do, or on the fly dividing up hit points amongst body parts or something, since that's not a real thing in a game. But when a PC says, "Hey, I want to do a called shot and cut off the tail of the dragon," there's no specified rule for that. You would have to do that on the fly if you allow something like that to happen. Yeah. Yeah, Joseph Keenan brings up Valley of the Robots, the mutant flying eyeball. That's another thing too. Talking about, I was going to bring up the proverbial flying eyeball, the beholder, but there's lots of other things that fly, and we often think of their havens being flat, not being vertical, and lots of flying things, especially magical things that can levitate or maneuver around in 3 dimensions, will probably give themselves a location where they can maneuver around, like cyberpunk, and someone's using drones in an abandoned archaeology or construction site or something, or something flying around in a sewer system, and the PCs are trudging through, ankle deep sludge and filth, thinking they're going after it, and then all of a sudden it takes a sharp turn vertically down or up, and then they realize we're going to have to climb up an elevator shaft, or rappel down where the sewage seems to flow, or something like that. Yeah, Deadman says Mech Warrior had random hit locations that the attacker rolled for when you are attacked. Of course. And, listen, you can make up your own random hit roll table, right? And you can even apply advantage or disadvantage to the random locations as well. So, the head is 1, chest is 2, 3 and 4 are either arm, 5 and 6 are either leg. You can go more specific and do hands. You could do either hand or either foot to add 4 more to that roll, so it's a D10. You could add the back or abdomen into there. You could even go even further and have a two-step thing. So 6 hit locations for the body, head, chest, both arms, both legs, and then a separate table for like the head, the arms, like, okay, it's either the eye, the ear, the forehead, the back of the neck, the throat, or something. I mean, depending on how deep or how specific you want it. Now, the problem will be in a highly cinematic game like, say, Dungeons and Dragons, it does not include things like permanent blindness or auto kills by hitting someone in the throat or concussions. You would have to incorporate that into the game, and there might be some kind of dissonance between a very highly cinematic base game and a very lethal, realistic hit location system. Joe says science fiction makes you think more in 3D because of space combat and water worlds. I agree with you on that, and especially because we know skyscrapers, bridges, and like you said, spacecraft, aerodyne styled vehicles. We're used to, like, I'm going to fly my aerial craft, my hovercraft or something in between the valley or the buildings or something. So we kind of think about that. Even superhero games do think in 3D, like Iron Man flying between buildings and swooping down into a parking lot, or high level parking lot or something. Run for the chopper. We'll run for the chopper. Go to the chopper. As he's chopping vegetables. Yeah. Yeah. Foolish Kiwi says, super specific, but I once did a sideways map. The room was only 5 foot square wide, like a hallway, but was incredibly tall, like a Super Mario level. Only one player had flight, but it helps. You know what? Why the hell not? You could have, I believe in third edition Dungeons and Dragons, or even before that. No. Second, Dark Sun. I still have a few adventures from Dark Sun, and one of them it was an adventure with a tribe of halflings, and they all lived on the side of a cliff. They just were used to living on the side of the cliffs, and they would jump from different ledges, and the whole adventure were interacting with these cliffside bio-arcana halflings that floated around on used airships, not airships, like air bladders, kind of thing. And how cool is it to have? Oh, listen, Spelljammer, Eberron, lots of those systems have airships in them, and that means that if there are airships, there are other flying vehicles, and if you're going to include flight, why not make it ubiquitous, right? Just like getting a horse or a donkey or a mule or a camel or an elephant or something. Maybe in your setting, it's no big deal to get a pterodactyl or a griffin or a pegasus or some other flying creatures, and maybe there are limitations and benefits to each one. Like the pegasus has greater maneuverability, but not as much endurance. Maybe the flying parrot or something like that is better able to withstand the tropical storms or something. Now, Joe goes on to say, poker chips under the minis, 10 foot for red, 50 foot for blue, 100 foot white, for example, for close combat. And you know what? I still have a stack of pizza box tables. I don't know if any of you guys receive these, but if you order a large or very large pizza, they make these triple-legged pizza tables that go in the middle of the box to keep the regular box from dipping in on top of it, and use those to put minis on top of. But I like the idea of poker chips because, like you said, you can establish a height for the poker chips to establish, like, basically, you can stack minis as they're flying over top of each other, that kind of thing. Deadman says, Mech Warrior 3rd edition used a D100 for hit locations, and one of the results was groin. Hell yeah. Hells yes. Although, rolling a 00 for the groin or whatever with like a spear or like a battle axe or something, it's like, and you've got 75 hit points and you take 13. Like, how do you describe that? I don't know. But again, in a game that's very cinematic, you kind of have to talk with each other. Like, listen, guys, I know this doesn't make sense to get hit in the eye for 7 hit points and still be able to see, but maybe it's like temporary blindness or temporary stun. Yeah, Tesla. I was thinking that too. Yeah, that's where the autocannon is. I've shot my load. Um, oh man. Foolish says big fly zappers to shoot down Pegasus from warring nations on the walls. Bug zappers. Just getting just imagining this like 80-foot long fly swatter with like a little electrical attachment to it, swatting down Pegasi. But you are right. Like if you have a world where flight is ubiquitous, what would they use to stop it? Would they have nets set up all around the upper reaches of towers to instantly to basically someone can just run by and pull a cord to have the weighted nets fall down on something that's flying? Would there be other high tech or flying things like disruptor cannons or sonic disruptors that confuse you? Would there be reflecting mirrors to prevent things from being able to see very well? Would there be literal smokestacks? You light the fires of green wood to create lots of smoke in the air. Again, I brought up smoke and fog. That could be a problem when maneuvering, and you might end up slamming into a wall or a tree or a canyon overhang or something like that. Yep, catapults flinging weighted nets are I could see that being very much a thing. Those dwarves in your world that use, I don't know, cannon like objects. They use alchemicals to fire weighted balls. I'm not calling them firearms because I know some people get really feel really funky about that. But why not? And yep, Foolish Kiwi says lightning, wind, and gas magic stocks would be booming. Well, hey, you want to defend your country? Hey, we got a 2-for-1 sale on lightning bolts, and we'll throw in a free hurricane in there just for you. But why not? Why wouldn't the Druidic cult be allowed, the Druidic cult of storms or gods to the storms be allowed to walk the castle walls or something, the city-state walls? Or if you want to go real, like not real high-tech, but, well, yes, high-tech, but really dynamic, a city could be domed. In hell, it's science fiction. There's always domed cities, domed crater cities, domed crevices, things like that. So even if you could fly in a domed city, you're still limited to how high you can go up, much like a stadium or something of that nature, right? So you or a shopping mall or something. Like, yes, you can fly in this place, but how maneuverable are you? And if you have wings limit, well, narrow locations. So a defense might be for everyone to scamper into a narrow location so that a flying enemy can't reach down, like let's say a dragon can't reach down into a narrow alley. I believe narrow and tight spaces are in 5th edition, and you can incorporate those. Like, hey, listen, all right, so if you're going to be in this large or huge or gargantuan creature cannot fit into the alley, but it can reach one of its limbs down there, like only its tail or only its claw, or it can only use its breath weapon. But it can't reach its body down there and go, okay, well, we're going to make a decoy, lead its head into the narrow cave, and then its body sticking out the back end, and then that's how we're going to throw a net over the back end of the creature so its head is stuck into the ground, but its body has a big old net strapped over top of it or something. Or maybe people train animals that go after flying things, like those predatory cats that are or gargoyles are part of the cityscape or something, or giant spiders string large webs that are very difficult to see all around the city or into the woodland areas, because the elves live in the trees and they use the giant spiders to weave these defensive nets or something around them, Yeah. Joe says, yeah, pop the dome, kill everyone in the city that can't get to a building. Yeah, especially if you pop a dome and it's exposed to like some kind of poisonous atmosphere. But presuming a city has a big dome over it, I'm sure there have to be some redundancies. Like, for example, you pop a dome over a city, pretty easy to go after an enemy that's trying to destroy one of the hexagonal panels that they're trying to pull off, right? Again, it would be like a death funnel, much like going through a military soldiers going through a door, consider it to be like the funnel of death. A creature trying to get through. They use this in the Avengers Infinity War. Big dome over Wakanda. Creatures spreading over the dome. Okay, here's what we're going to do. We're going to only open a specific sector of the dome, and then try to make a killing funnel. Now, it didn't quite work out the way they thought it would, but same concept, right? Flying creatures need to come in, focus them into one area. Boom! Now you've got them trapped, especially if they're arrogant. And lots of PCs and NPCs are pretty darn arrogant because of their flying superiority, right? They may not even see or even care about the ants running around below them when they fly past, say, a particular height or something, and then all of a sudden they get blinded by those reflective bronze mirrors, and then someone throws a net over top of them, and oh, by the way, there's someone throws a sack of like choking powder or poison gas, and then they fall directly into the ground or hit a wall or something. Foolish Kiwi says, in our setting, the towers have windmills, that generate static for a Tesla-esque coil to shoot at flying invaders. Obviously, they take a long time to recharge, but it's a good deterrent. I love that. I love that idea. And as a matter of fact, the windmill recharging thing, again, going back to Brandon Anderson, right? It's not the electrical static. It's the limitation that they're able to use to have it in the first place, right? That makes it kind of cool, kind of interesting. And hell, I would understand windmills creating like a wind shear. You get the blades moving fast enough, they create a wind shear that prevents flying things from happening. Especially in science fiction, I could see someone turning up the wind machines for like air or something to make them so powerful that it creates such a powerful wind that people on hover platforms or using flying jetpacks or something have a hard time using it. Hell, if you got flying jetpacks, if you have something that can disrupt how they fly, like do they suck in air? Maybe you can throw particulates in the air or something, so on and so forth. Ooh, yes. Joe says pressure differences too. Also depends on if the buildings are sealed. A pressure difference could cause a huge disruption. Someone could purposefully change the pressure so that a flying creature tries to go through a barrier, and then that pressure difference causes like an air cannon. It causes an explosion to at least knock them off balance or fling them into some kind of barrier or something like that. Yep, EMP bursts are another way of doing it. Non-hardened gear, even if it's temporary, or if there are, hell, a hacker. A hacker could disrupt a flying mechanism that's using some kind of navigational method as well for science fiction kind of thing. Hell, anti-magic. There you go. We've got anti-magic for those flying wizards or something. Yep, Scott Pose says, you like inside? So, are chandeliers, wall sconces, statues on pedestals, suits of armor, mounted trophy heads, tall, heavy furnishings, so fly carefully. Hell yeah, what's the chandelier made out of discarded antlers? Ouch. Ow. Yeah. Hell, flying around and catching on fire by accident from all those lit torches on the wall sconces. The hanging banners and tapestries, and I don't mean the ones just against the wall. I'm talking about the ones that hang from. You often see in today's parlance, you would see them hanging like flags, or in stadiums for championships for different sporting teams. So they'll hang in the middle of hallways. That could be a thing. Or hell, you could even have a safety mechanism that swings the tapestries out from the wall into the hallways if flying things are a problem. Or I don't know, maybe the Druidic cult is like, release the sturges after the flying things, release the bugs or something, the flying swarms or whatnot. Hell, maybe even, there's nothing, there's a, come on, kitty. But so, oh, you got to go to work. Oh, sorry about that, Joe. Yeah, just to let you guys know, I'll say this again, that eclipse phase and altered carbon and transhumanism and the expanse and everything after that will be on Future Friday specifically. So I am separating Future Friday from our Monday to Thursday talks. But same concept, an hour long. I know some of you may not be into that kind of thing, but please do so. And thank you, Deadman. Thank you very much for as Deadman puts into the Twitch feed. This show is simulcast on Twitch and YouTube and Discord, and please take part in all of them. And just as a call to action, thank you guys very much, especially if you are on Twitch or you have access to Twitch. Please go over. I would love to become an affiliate. Kind of need 50 followers and an average of like 3 viewers at a time. But in order to become an affiliate, got to have 50 followers. And I know there's plenty of you out there who are part of Twitch and maybe even prefer to watch the show on Twitch, which is pretty good. So and also listen, if you want to support the channel, just spread the word. Give a thumbs up, a like, comment, just take part, all that kind of stuff. Yeah. I am not going to butcher that word, guys. Foolish Kiwi says the German word for airplane is Flugzeug. Literally translating the flying thing. Enjoy your new title for literally anything not on the ground. Yeah, airplane. So, in short, flying creatures, monsters, devices. We didn't even talk about constructs, whether they are drones or robots or something, or even in a medieval setting, you can have flying devices. Twitch, dude, I'm an old guy too. Yeah, I'm an old groggy man. But anyway, guys, thank you so much for taking part in this. I really appreciate it. It's awesome. We are going to continue our talk about flight on, tomorrow on Discord Tuesday. There is World Building Wednesday, where we are going to design ourselves a world of flight. Yes, a world built in the air. That's going to be awesome. And of course, Third Pillar Thursday, Third Pillar of Exploration, is one of my specialties. Because I write books about it. I'm a contributing writer to Critical Hit Publishing. I'm going to even, that's me. That's what I do. That's my thing. So, and then of course we have Future Friday. Are we going to bring up flight on Future Friday? Hell yeah. But as of right now, we are going to, Future Fridays again are going to be eclipse phase, transhumanist focused, and probably will have a different theme than our normal. So, guys, thank you very much. Say hello to my little friend. Anyway, guys, everyone have a great day. I appreciate you guys being here, and please join us tomorrow live. Thank you so much.